I wish I could give a countdown, but okay. All right. I believe it has started. So I will say hello to everybody. My name is Sam Jack, and I'm here for the first ever online virtual meeting of the Fourth Tuesday Photography Club. It's going to be an adventure, so bear with us if anything goes a little bit wonky with the technology, but we're hopeful. Our presenter is Jeff Heidel, who is a extremely active volunteer and organizer of this group, and a great photographer himself. And I'll let him introduce himself and his program in a minute here. But before we turn over to that, I just wanted to bring everybody's attention to some upcoming programs that we're doing online as well. On June 6th, Dave McCain will be here for an online program on dusk photography. I haven't had the chance to meet Dave, but I know that several of you have, and he's going to connect with us from Ireland. So that'll be really special, and that's at a special time on Saturday, June 6th. So you can find out about that on the Facebook event. And then we're also planning a Fourth Tuesday program at our regular time on June 23rd at 7 p.m. The presenter for that, we're not quite ready to announce yet, but I'm heard some good possibilities, so that should be really good. And then in July, on July 21st, Fourth Tuesday, Dave Leaker or Liker, I'm not 100% sure which way it's pronounced.
It's Liker.
Liker, thank you.
Isn't that right, Jim?
Yeah, Jim's nodding his head, so yeah, that sounds good. So yeah, so Dave will give a program on horses of the Flint Hills and photographing those. And we're getting into our summer library program with a lot of other online programs and stuff for adults. I would just refer everybody to our website, newtonplks.org, and there's a lot to get involved in and online programs to participate in. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff. Thank you again, Jeff.
Thank you, Sam. So let's just go a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Newton, Kansas. I got started in photography my sophomore year in high school. During the day, I work as a PCB engineer. And if you don't know what PCB is, that's your circuit boards that are in your computers, stuff like that. And what's interesting about that, in high school, my loves were art, photography, and drafting. And PCB kind of combines all those into one thing. I think early on when I started it, they would show me a negative image, and I could see it because I was used to looking at negatives. So they were really amazed by that. I'm also with Susan Bartle, the co-founder of this club. We started it a little over almost 10 years ago. The evenings anymore, I'm not doing it as much. I'm not sure how much I'm going to do it next year, but a sports photographer for the McPherson News. And I currently live in McPherson. Been here for a little over 5 years now. And I'm also an artist and board member of the Carriage Factory Gallery in Newton. And I'm also on the board of Maxwell. So Maxwell was named after John Galt Maxwell. He was born in Scotland in 1825 and came over here at the age of 34 in 1859. He immediately fell in love with the plains, and just especially the herds of bison. But for some, I'm not really sure why, but he returned to New York shortly after he got here. And some think maybe he's had some Indian problems. Some say he was to go get married, but he did return to New York and he was married. But in 1866, he came back here through the Homestead Act and settled what's near Marquette. He had two sons, John Jr. and Henry. He was a farmer and a businessman. And also the Justice of Peace for McPherson County. He started the J.G. Maxwell Grain Company near McPherson. And in 1877, his sons took over the business after he died. His last surviving son, John Jr. Henry was the last one that survived, and he donated $75,000 to be set aside to purchase 3 to 6 sections of Kansas prairie, native prairie, so they could use it for devoted to educating the people about the Kansas prairies. So in 1944, brought just under 2,600 acres of rolling prairie. We're in the Battle Hill Township. It took them 7 years to get the land fenced in order to receive the bison. And in 1951, we had 10 bison and 6 elk from the Wichita Mountains. Later on, a half section was set aside. That's the McPherson State Fishing Lake. And there's been over the years, as more land has been purchased, now that we're over 2,800 acres. And 160 acres was just recently acquired through a private donation, which will allow even more. That's probably going to be a while before that gets be able to get utilized. Right now, the herd they try to keep the herd around 162 bison and 90 elk. And then the state burns the grass about every 3 years just to keep it down and not burn it too much so we don't ruin the bluebirds that are nesting in this area. Maxwell's kind of unique because we've got 190 species of birds that have made its way through there over the last 20 years. And Maxwell also exceeds in keeping the native Smoky Hill region, or keeping it native to the Smoky Hill region, and supports over 300 documented wildflowers and grasses. And I promise we'll get through all this text really quick here. I just wanted to give you a little background. In 1993, what is now the Friends of Maxwell was established, and this is the group that, if you've ever been on a tour, they're the ones that run that. And the goal of this was to educate the public about the prairie, the animals, and the people of Kansas. We do tours year-round. Unfortunately, right now with coronavirus, that's kind of put a halt to some of that. They also oversee annual events like Mountain Rendezvous, trail rides, wildflower tours, and the elk tours. We also host something that Jim and I started probably 8 years ago. Photography tours. Jim started the first one back in I went to my first one in 2010 or 2009, I can't remember. I think it was 2010. And then him and I started doing the Freeze Your Buns Off later on. And then it kind of expanded into some spring wildflowers and fall wildflowers. In 2015, they had visitors from 42 states and 22 countries. So my first visit was March 3rd, 2010. And we had been less than a year on the Fourth Tuesday Photography Club. And I was looking for something to do as an outing. And I found out I've lived here all my life and I'd never even heard of Maxwell, and I've lived less than an hour away from it. I call them up and asked them about maybe doing a tour there. And they told me that, well, the elk still have their antlers and they haven't dropped them yet. I'm like, well, can I come down there Saturday? And they go, yeah, come on down. We'll get you on the schedule. Well, I get there that Saturday morning and they forgot to put me on the schedule. So I had missed the tram ride. But Betty happened to be sitting in there and she goes, well, I can just take him out in the truck. So that day, it was the first time I met Betty, became friends. So it's one of my first pictures out at Maxwell, nice big bull elk. She brought me out there. And I'm sitting there shooting these pictures of the bull elks. It's probably, if you've ever been out there in the wintertime, there's usually about 20 of them that hang out together. She started telling me about this crazy guy from McPherson. She goes, he gets down there and he lays down on his stomach and he takes pictures, scares the heck out of us. And I sit there thinking, I got to meet this guy. I get back to the visitor center and they tell me about this photography tour that's coming up in June of that year. So it was 2010 when I first met Jim. So I called Jim that night, or sent him an email, and that night he calls me, and I think within a week we'd met, and we've been pretty much friends ever since. So that day I found 2 new friends and a love for Maxwell, so I kind of cherish that date. So Maxwell, as y'all know, we do a lot of tours, just regular tours, but there's also special events out there. There's some Christmas, at Christmas time, they do an old fashioned Christmas where they dress up as Mrs. Claus or tell older Christmas stories. They have Christmas cookies and hot chocolate, and they also do a bison tour. There's some of the cookies. That's always fun for the kids. And then in October, the first weekend is Mountain Man Rendezvous, where you get these guys that come out here, and they come out Friday and they stay all weekend, and they live like you did in the late 1800s. Some of them a little more authentic than others. This one right here, I'm pretty sure this is Neighbor's setup here. This is Neighbor right here. Everything he has either from 1880s, I think, or made exactly like they would there. He's a really interesting character, great with the kids, kind of telling them how they do things. And I don't know, they used to let him shoot flintlocks. Jim's got a pretty nice video of him loading and firing a flintlock there one year. If you ever get a good chance to go out there first week in October, I mean, just talking to Neighbors worth the visit. The other thing they do out through the year, if you got a horse, they do trail rides. Usually they get about 20 horses out there, and they go for it's a morning and afternoon ride. They stop for lunch in between. You can either do the half day or the full ride. And I've seen them before taking pictures where they've went through a stream, and next thing you know, you see about 20 elk pop their head up. So they try to keep them away from the bison, but every once in a while they'll surprise an elk or something. He's one of the older trail bosses. The guy on the left is the current trail boss. Him and his son do all the trail rides now. And like I alluded to earlier, they also do photo tours out there. And the difference between a regular tour and a photo tour is we go out a little longer than we would, and we get into stuff a little bit more. Like we'll stay with the elk more. We'll usually get out of the tram if we're with just elk. So we have a little bit more photo opportunities than you would on a normal tram. So we've been doing this Freeze Your Buns Off since I think 2012. Let me see something here. I'm not seeing my notes. I've got notes.
Jeff, we started doing the Freeze Your Buns Off as a fundraiser for Betty to put in a storage building for her lawnmowers and stuff, because they were stored in the visitor center. And
yeah, I thought we did that. I thought that fundraiser was that one where we had the guy out doing the buffalo hunter.
no, that was way before. It was way before that. We didn't call it Freeze Your Buns Off because we didn't have a name for it. I just told Betty, give me 2 weekends, I'll raise $2,000. She said, no way. And I did it. So
yeah.
After that, I had my free reign out there. So.
For some reason, I don't know if it's just because this other stuff is, oh, okay, that's what's going on. All right, yeah, and then one year we did another fundraiser. We had a guy dress up in period buffalo hunting, and that was kind of cool. We did that for it was pretty cold that day. I think a lot of people ended up canceling, but we had him actually firing, and there's probably about 10 of us that actually got to take pictures of it. So just some of his stuff. So a little bit about American bison. You see a lot of people calling them buffalo, but they are not related to buffalo. However, the name was listed as acceptable in many dictionaries. Samuel de Champlain was the first to apply the name of buffalo to them in 1616. It's buffles in French. Scientific name is bison, and life expectancy is about 15 to 20 years. The last bison in Kansas was killed in 1887. Maxwell gets about, you can read some of this yourself here, but we get about 50 new babies every year, and right now is baby time. Haven't been out there yet, but or got a count, but we should be, most of them should be getting close to being born here. By the end of this month, we should have almost all the new babies in. They were named the official state animal in 1955 and our national mammal in May 9th, 2016. There's just one of the plains elk that are also out there are native to Kansas. A lot of people think that they're native to the Rocky Mountains. They're really not native to the Rocky Mountains. We started hunting the buffalo. We also started hunting elk and kind of drove them out, and that's kind of drove them to the mountains. The last of the elk were basically just killed off in the 1890s. They were reintroduced in 1981 to the wild, but Maxwell had already had a population since 1951, I'm sorry. And then in 1986, 12 of the Maxwell elk were released into Fort Riley's herd. Life expectancy is about 10 to 13 years in the wild. At Maxwell, we average about 10 to 12 babies a year. Calving time is around June. So since we're talking about new babies, let's just start there. This is probably I've got so many favorite times of the year at Maxwell, but these little guys are so cute and they just run around, and you'll see a couple of them playing. They're just like kids, you know, they just run around, they play, chase each other, got their buddies. Fun fact about them. At birth, they're 30 to 70 pounds. So could you imagine giving birth to a 70-pound baby? They're called red dogs because of their orange-red color, but after a few months, that color changes to a dark brown and they get their characteristic shoulder hump and horns begin to start showing. Within an hour after birth, they can walk, and a cow will care for their young for about a year. Some more of the babies. And I'm not sure if we're still we've got a Babies in Wildflower tour set up for June, and I'm not sure if it's still going on or not. I haven't heard for sure. I assume it's still going on. Little Baby in the Rain. One thing I've noticed, and I've been to Africa with Jim and just watching other animals, one thing you notice about moms and babies, you know, it's just kind of like a mom's love for her baby and humans. In the wildlife, it's the same way. You see that them caring for them all the time. They get away, you start hearing them call them. Babies make great headrests. So if I'm going too fast for these, let me know. I don't know how fast so if you ever if you've never been out there in May, June, go out there, because especially if you like the babies, you can probably, if you drive through right now, you can probably see them at the side of the road. They'll be running around, just don't drive through their clothes. So then as we get into this time of year, you also start noticing that winter coat starts to come off, and you'll start seeing that big fur coat just kind of start peeling away, and it look kind of shaggy this time of year until it's all gone. They'll rub up against trees or roll around just to get that extra fur off. Some more facts about bison. Yellowstone National Park is the only place where bison have continuously lived since prehistoric times. They're the largest mammal in North America. A bull can weigh up to 2,000 pounds, 6 feet tall, while females can weigh up to 1,000 pounds, reach height of 4 to 5 feet tall. You can judge a bison by its mood if it's by its tail. When it hangs down and twitches naturally, the bison is usually calm. If the tail is standing straight up, watch out and trip the guy next to you and start running. So, another thing too is, bison look like a slow lumbering animal, but they can run up to 35 miles an hour, and they're extremely agile. They can jump high fences. They're strong swimmers, and they will outlast a horse. However, they are nearsighted, but they have an excellent sense of smell. There's some of the leftover fur in the May-June time frame. And as you see, this one has got most of that rubbed off. You can see all the scratch marks from rubbing up against a tree or something. Some more of the fur starting to come off in the June time frame. Get some nice sun rays on a bison. Starting to get a herd coming through. This is probably more in the July time frame, because you notice how nice and clean the fur is now. All that extra winter coat's gone. And they're not just bison and elk out there too. We've got a lot of insects, wildflowers, deer. Well, that's an elk, sorry. This is an elk in velvet, probably in July time frame. The first time I'd ever seen a elk in velvet, well, I didn't actually see it. Showed up on my text from a certain person that's on this call, rubbing it in because I didn't get to see it. Never lets me forget that July 4th. But yeah, if you can get to see them in the summer, on a cool summer morning, you get to see them in their velvet. It's always a treat. Then we have the bison wallow. Oops, sorry, hold up. So it's called wallowing. It's bison roll in the dirt to deter the biting of flies and kind of help shed the fur. Male bison also wallows during the mating season to leave behind their scent and display their strength. The bison rolling around. Okay, sorry. That's kind of what they look like. And they can't roll completely over. So they'll do one side, get up, and then go do the other side. It's one of those things that's it's kind of cool in a picture, but a lot more interesting in video, watching them do it, especially with sound. So we get into the July-September time frame. We start getting into the romance time of the bison. They get all decorated up, try to make the boys look good. The males, they can't compete with the big bulls, so they try to get a bouquet of flowers for the girls. That works pretty good until the big guys come, and then it's game over for the younger guys. They start coming in, start letting them know they're around, and start finding mates. These guys definitely don't want to get in their way during this time of season. So some tips on photographing bison. Best probably, in my opinion, early in the morning or late in the afternoon when the sun's low in the sky. I love to have the light behind them with a catch light in the sun, or light behind me, I'm sorry, with a catch light in their eyes. Rim lightings can be nice if you can get it just right. You can get that nice rim lighting with the sun behind them. If you overexpose by half stop to full stop from what your camera meter tells you. And the biggest thing to do is just be respectful of the bison and give them plenty of space. It's like I said earlier, they can move fast, a lot faster than you look. So another big bull. This guy is I think he's starting to do his little tongue curl, part of the mating ritual. Like to stick their tongues out. And you also see a lot of fighting for superiority. And just to give you an idea how fast those heads are moving, this was a fairly fast shutter speed. I want to say 800th of a second or 640th of a second. You can see how much blur I'm getting in that one head. So you can imagine the force of those two heads hitting each other. Now, this next picture was these next few are in the winter time. These are probably more just sparring and just showing off a little bit more so than for mating. But after all that's good and done, then the romance starts. I give the girl a little big kiss. Finds his girlfriend, and well, we'll let it go from what goes on there. The fall is probably I have 3 favorite seasons. I think my favorite seasons are fall, spring, and winter. And summer's okay, but fall, I love the colors, especially if we've had a wet summer and we come in and we get this fall wild colors, the purples. Probably one of my more popular pictures. This was done on Santa Fe Day trip days. This bison he saw me and we connected, and he just stared at me, just young bull. Just, I don't know, just that eye contact makes for the picture with the color around him. You know how it is lately with fall colors. We haven't had, you have to really catch it when you do. So every once in a while you get lucky and get out there at Maxwell with the fall colors. And if you see under here, I don't know if you can see, there's a little baby bison sitting right underneath her. The babies that were bright orange are now starting to turn brown. This is probably a year-old one here. And we just start getting all these wildflowers. I think it's just a good mix with the bison and the wildflowers. Every once in a while in the fall, you'll still see a red dog, and it's just they were a late born baby. This one was probably, I'm going to guess, born in August. But as you can see, the babies are starting to turn their color. They're not as orange as much. But like I said, the fall is, I think, spring's got some really nice wildflowers, but it seems like lately we haven't had as good of wildflowers in the spring. But the last probably 5 years, we've just had amazing wildflowers in the fall. And that's one reason I like to head out there. Another fairly young, this one's probably a late born baby again too, since it's still red. Every once in a while you see the whole family unit out there. Like I said earlier, the babies make great headrests for the moms. A little damp morning for this one. In the fall, they also do a wildflower tour, and so you can get out there. There's quite a few people on the Maxwell staff that are really knowledgeable about wildflowers. So if, like Betty's one, Ken's another, if you can get out there, you got questions about wildflowers, just ask away, and they can probably tell you every single one what it is. I said earlier, there's 300 documented native wildflowers and grasses out at Maxwell. And don't ask me, I'm really bad with the wildflower names. Birds and wildflowers, So I've been going to Maxwell for 10 years, a little over 10 years now. So this last March would have been I've been out there for 10 years. And I don't know if I've ever seen the same thing twice going out there. It's like a unique trip every time you go out. The colors are different. I think this was a day, I think Pam's on here too. I think Pam, Jim, and I were out here sitting at the top of the hill, and she just this gal just walked up over the hill, had a long 300mm zoom on. She was quite a ways away from me. We weren't in any danger or anything. Don't want to make it sound like we were close to her, but I had a big lens on. I think that was from the same day. Young bull. Female elk. One of the real treats, if you get there in the fall, is sometime be able to see an elk. They usually don't come out until it's cooler, so we don't really see them regularly until like November, December timeframe when it starts getting cool. But every once in a while, you get a cool morning in late September, early October, and if you're lucky, you'll see one. Now you can hear them at night bugling, but you just won't see them usually during the day. And every once in a while, you'll get lucky and see a deer out there too. We'll fawn by the pond. And it's winter, my second favorite time of the year, other than the fact that it's cold. It's elk are what I really love out there, and the elk are back in the wintertime. The grass is starting to turn brown, and I don't know what it is. I just, it's not a colorful time, but the browns, you just get these different shades of browns in the wintertime of the prairie grass. And I just love the texture and just the variations of the color, even though it's just brown. It's hard to explain until you see it, I guess. It's still early winter. Got our first snow. You'll see them with their snow on their nose a lot because they're always looking around the ground for food. And you also see the snow on their back too, and just because of the insulation on it, it doesn't really burn off as fast. The last few years, I've probably seen more than it used to be. It used to be the elk and the bison really stayed separate. I guess the first year I went out there was bison and elk together, but it seems like lately, then for a long time, the bison and elk stayed pretty much separate, especially the male elk. But the last few years, I don't know if the bison just kind of moved in to where the elk want to be, and elk just gave up and shared the space with them, or what. But you start seeing.
I'm listening to the Newton Library Photography evening. Yeah.
Hey, Weldon, can you put your mic on mute, please? Can you still hear me?
Yeah, you're good, Jeff. Sorry about that.
Okay. Yeah. So early winter, start seeing these guys come back out. The males are a little jitterish right around early winter. And they start, as we move on through the season, they start kind of getting together a lot more. Used to be about 25, 27 males that hang out together. And it seems to be smaller groups now. Like there's a younger group and an older group that hang out together. It's not like it used to be. It's changed probably last 5 years. Yeah, got one here doing a bugle. This guy here was one that I would watch every year for, make sure he made it through the winter. This might have been his last winter because he was looking a little rough. He had the unique down tie on him, and they actually have a set of his antlers at the Refuge Center. If you ever want to go take a look at it. But he had that unique one, and every year I'd go look for him. And they were going to put him down one year because they always kind of call the herd a little bit. But another elk passed away, so he kind of made one more winter. And then no one ever knows what happened, if coyotes got him or if he just died naturally or what. But didn't make it through one winter. We had really bad rain in the fall, so the grass was not as good as it normally would be. So you saw a lot of the elk were really thin that year. You'll see a lot of sparring in the wintertime. They're just basically playing, getting ready for later on when the rut happens. It's kind of a close-up of them. But you see, this might have been one of the years where they were looking a little rough. You see the fur is not real heavy on them, and just the grass was just not as nutritious as normally. Even here you can see he's a little skinny. Every once in a while you get lucky, get to go out there in the wintertime when it's snowing. Jim and I were out there close to Maxwell that day. We weren't expecting to actually go. And Betty calls us. She goes, you know, it's snowing at Maxwell. And we go, yeah, we're 5 minutes away. She goes, I'll be there in 10. And so we got out there, got some really nice pictures, really heavy snow that day. And, you know, elk are just like humans, got to go out and stick your tongue out and catch snowflakes on them. It's kind of a little bigger picture of the male herd. And one thing, it's a little known fact, and this probably isn't going to go over as well online, but Maxwell is a training ground for a certain individual that lives up north. When one of his reindeer get injured. Well, one year, one of the really famous reindeer were down here working off a knee injury and came out to rehab at Maxwell. I'm not sure if you can figure out who he was. So, but we still have bison in the wintertime. This was, I think, last year. We were pulling, it was for elk days, and it snowed pretty good the week before, and they pulled the tram up and they couldn't get over the hill. And this big bull just sat there, and it was like he was mocking us. It's like, what's the matter? Can't you get over the hill? You know, just sat there and mocked us the whole time. It was quite humorous. And they finally had to bring another vehicle in to pull this one so we could get over the hill. This was the same day. I don't think he was real happy to see us. Maybe we probably because we didn't have range cubes or something with us. See some of the younger bulls with the females. The younger ones won't hang out with the males until they've got almost a full head of antlers. There was a couple years ago we saw one that a spiker that tried to hang out with the big guys, but I don't think he lasted very long. Some of the males together. I think the elk with the backdrops on snow is just one of my favorites. Kind of a little mix. I think the picture on the left, I think we might have had a Pentex shooter that day, because we found that anytime there's well, it's only one Pentex shooter. It's not Pentex in general, but whenever John's out there, the elk always stick their tongues out at him. This is another one of that elk that I was talking about earlier, downturn. One of my favorites. So just love them in the wintertime. If you ever get to see some of Jim's video from out there, he's got some where they're just walking and you see their breath coming out, and it's just really amazing just to watch them. This is what I was talking about, the variations of the colors and the browns. It's all brown, but it's just layers of different colors of brown. If you ever drive down the highway in the Flint Hills during the winter, you'll know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I don't know why. I just thought this was funny with the elk in the background and the tongue. I'm sure that was just a lucky capture and not something I intended to capture. So, sorry, I've got a lot of slides here. I'm just going to go through them a little fast till we get some more. Again, bugling. And then some of the spikers with the females. So freeze your buns off. We talked about that a little bit. The first official freeze your buns off, well, before it was freeze your buns off, was January 14th, 2012. We did it before an elk days one. Freeze your buns was coined on, hold on our next year. We had one on February 2nd, 2013. The temperature was 5 degrees outside. And I think someone coined the phrase, they're going to freeze our buns off out here. The interesting thing is it was 5 degrees out, but there was no wind. I mean, it was cold, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't. I've been in, seems like 20 and 30 degree temperatures with a wind. It seemed colder than that day. And it could be just because I was out with the elk and I was happy that I didn't care that it was 5 degrees, but it was definitely one of the colder days we've had. And every once in a while on Freeze Your Buns Off, we get lucky and have snow out there. This was a couple years ago. And this might have been elk days too. I'm not sure, because there was one, the elk days that we had snow and then we didn't have anything, hardly any snow left for Freeze Your Buns Off. We've also had some Freeze Your Buns Off where it's been not really freezing, more like warm your buns off. It's like, you know, high upper 30s. This is kind of a rare picture that I think as I took this last year, was to actually see one of the big bulls with some of the younger elk. That's not something that you really see that often in the wintertime. You see it more early winter, I guess, but or if he's the big bull, you know, with the herd. But one of the things that we come across on Freeze Your Buns Off is the morning sunrise picture. This was probably the first year we had that gold or that orange color on the top of the hill. Then every year we kind of named this ridge Sunrise Ridge. It's just something that every year we really look for these nice silhouettes on that with a nice orange sky, and everybody kind of looks forward to it. This one almost looks like there's like a fire behind them. I think this year we were really close to them. And I had like a 300 millimeter lens, and it's like I was doing everything. Like, this is not cropped. This is trying to back up as much as I could just to get a picture. You know, the bison want to get in on the action too. This is probably the one year that I think everybody just went crazy. The sky was just gorgeous. And I think this was maybe last year or the year before, where he had a really nice view. We were a lot closer than we normally would have been too, because we came up a different route. Get that nice rim lighting on the elk from the sun. The sunrise. I think this year we didn't really get the orange like we normally would get, but we had still pretty impressive sunrise, but no elk that year. Then there's probably a few people that know this. Every year for Great Plains, we have a big name photographer come in, and I'm trying to remember who it was the year we had him out, but we took him out to Maxwell before they did their presentation on a Friday night before they did their presentation on Saturday. And we're out there, and he's got a 400 millimeter lens, and he's got elk in front of him, and they're, you know, he's taking pictures away. Then out of the distance, this bison comes in out of nowhere and just runs the elk off. And he stops right in front. I think it was Lewis Kemper, if I remember rightly. Just stops right in front of him, right in front of Lewis, and he just starts throwing his head like to left and throwing it to the right. And he has this big mane, we call him Fabio. And he was just, it's like he knew where the camera was, and quite the character. So, yeah, it was Lewis Kemper. Just looked at my notes now. If you want to reserve a tour, you need a minimum of 10 people. Just call the Refuge or send them an email. Don't try to book it through Facebook. They don't check that as often. The other thing you can do is join the Fans of Maxwell Wildlife Refuge page. And that's where Jim and I will announce any of our tours that we have for photography tours. And then there's also, they have a web page, maxwellwildliferefuge.com, where you can go out and learn more information about Maxwell, learn a little more about the history. And just let you know, anytime we do a photo tour or any kind of tour that's out there, all that money goes back to support Maxwell. So like when Jim and I do a photo tour, we're not making any money off that. All that money they make stays with the the Friends of Maxwell, so they can buy a new shed or, you know, buy equipment or fix the trams. So, and the same goes with any of a normal tour too. And I just thought I'd leave you with one, you know, there's one things about moms, you know, that are normal with the animal kingdom and the normal kingdom. You know, you should always love your mom. And no matter what, moms are going to embarrass you in the most awkward time. So that's all I got. Any questions? So you can just unmute.
You got any questions?
Yeah, unmute if you've got questions. And then those of you watching on our live stream on Facebook, just type your questions in the comments and I will relay them to Jeff.
Sam, you're talking, but I don't hear anything coming out.
I think I'm unmuted. Did you guys hear that?
Still not.
Anybody?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Jeff. I don't know if
So
I'm
can
being
you
heard
hear
or not. Unmute. Oh, there we go. I think maybe that'll do. Can you hear me now?
We hear.
Okay, great. Yeah, so yeah, feel free to chime in with questions on Zoom, or those of you in the chat on Facebook, type your question and I will read it, and Jeff can answer it from there.
Jenny, do you want to drive around a little bit? That way you see something.
They don't have Q&A, they have chat. Send them a question via chat.
Hmm?
Send them a question via chat.
Just say thank you.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess let me see here to get the ball rolling, I guess. You know, how close, I'm kind of wondering, how close do you think these animals that live on the wildlife refuge, how close do you think you're seeing to their kind of totally natural ancestral behaviors, the way they would have acted before there were people around?
I'm not sure. I think it's pretty natural because, like I said, Maxwell does not, you know, they don't go to vets or anything like that. So if they get sick, they're going to die just like they would, you know, in the wild. But they're used to seeing people. I mean, I'm guessing in 1880, if a bison would have saw a couple of white guys coming, they would have headed for the hills instead of running to the tram. So, you know,
Yeah.
especially if they see anything that looked like a gun, you know, they're going to be gone. So yeah, definitely. I think that part of their behavioral's changed. But I think as far as how they roam and graze and stuff like that, I'm guessing it's fairly similar.
The feeding, they do feed supplements to them.
Just
That's
supplements, yes,
because they can't migrate.
correct. So if like the year that they had the bad grass, they gave them a lot more supplements than they would have normally given them.
Yeah.
And they tend to give them a lot more supplements in the wintertime just because of the grass is not as nutritious then. That's a good question.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Well, I guess just it seems like you got the
You have to sit
the lighting was always really good on your photos and stuff. Is that
for
do you
some,
kind of get a feel for how to set up your camera and the exposure and stuff?
Yeah, you get a feel for it over time. And the other thing too is when we're going out there, we're going out there during good light. I'm not going out there at 11 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm out there early light or late in the evening at sunset. So we get that really nice golden hour light. So that makes a big difference. If you go out there during the day, you're gonna have harsher light, and you can do that. You can get good photos. Don't get me wrong, we've done it.
Especially cloudy.
Yeah, especially if it's cloudy. If it's cloudy, it's you get that 20% gray going on you in the background.
Not so harsh.
Yeah, but yeah, lighting is the big thing. And like I said, you overexpose a little bit or underexpose. I can't remember what I said. You get used to it because that darkness of the bison just sucks in the light on the light meter, and it really kind of messes it up. So you have to adjust.
Sort of like a black hole.
Yeah, it's like a black hole. Elk are a little easier to take the pictures of just because they're white. They're white and they're not as dark.
And did you say earlier? I'm sorry. Did you say earlier? You said earlier where these populations came from?
Some of them came from the Wichita Mountains in Oklahoma.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's where most of the original stock came from. Now over time they've gotten stuff. They've traded with different refuges. We've gotten some like when Great Bend, back in, what was it, 15, 14, 13, somewhere in there, when they had the big drought, Great Bend had to give us a lot of their bison because they couldn't support them any longer. And we got a few that away. We gave a lot of them back. I think we might have kept the babies.
Any of them you saw in the photos that had ear tags came
You're
from
right.
Great Bend.
Right.
They ear tag. Maxwell has no ear tags, and they're bison.
Right. But yeah, we've traded with other locations just to keep the bloodlines not stagnant. And then the original herd that was at Fort Riley for elk, some of them came from Maxwell to start that herd.
Sam, when I moved to Kansas was in '93. It's the same year they started doing the tours at Maxwell, and they're all done at 10 o'clock in the morning. And when I went out there, I was excited about it, but I was also upset over the fact that the lighting was so bad. I kept begging them to go earlier. They finally did one for me at 9:30, which wasn't that great. And then Betty came in and she needed to raise that money. And I said, look, do me an early morning, a sunrise tour, and I'll help you raise the money. And that's how we got started with the photo tours. Was basically we sold out 3 trams for 2 weekends in a row and raised over $2,000. And after that, she said, whatever you guys want to do, I'm game. Yeah. So it's just a matter of we needed to show them that we were serious about being out there as photographers. And once that gate was down, they've been very, very cooperative. In fact, they make up things for us to do. We do sunset tours as well now, which they're not quite as, they have been really, really good at times, but they're hit and miss more than the sunrise.
Yeah, I kind of, oops. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, you cut out for a second, but you're good now.
Something's going on here. Can you guys still hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I think the problem with sunsets is I don't think there's as good a spot for sunsets out there as there are for sunrises.
Right.
And I think, and usually, the elk probably make better silhouettes than bison do, unless you can. So.
Well, the other thing that we have if you go out there on your own, you're not going to get the same sunrise and sunset shots that you get on a tour. because you don't have the use of the feed truck.
Right.
We use that to steer the animals where you want them. So we take the feed truck out and move the animals to where they're in the right place for us to get photos of them with the right background. So you end up being a director as opposed to a photographer.
That's kind of funny when you say that as director, because we're sitting there with mics and we're saying, move the feed truck 300 feet to the left, or, they're all, over the years, they've learned to be pretty good about positioning those feed trucks to get us the good pictures and stuff like that. When we first started, they just would run the feed truck right along the tram, and we'd have bison right up against us and with their heads down. And now they've learned over time to not drop feed right away, or maybe drop some a little bit, then hold up for a while until after we're done taking pictures, then drop some more.
Otherwise,
so keep
they're
their heads
facing
up.
the ground.
Right. So they've done a really good job over the years of learning to accommodate us.
Because we're photographers and not tourists.
Yeah.
Different breed.
Yeah, definitely different breed. You could probably,
Is the whole place pretty much open grassland, or are there any trees or wood places that you can go and take photos in?
there are trees out there, but it's kind of like Kansas is. They're more around the streams and stuff like that. So you don't see a lot. I would say they're probably not native trees. They just kind of happened like everywhere around Kansas. So, and it's not something you can just go hike out on too. It's not like Great Plains or the tall grass where you can go hike out there. So you don't want to just go out unless you're with a tour or something, but you can see a lot of them from the road if you want.
Yeah,
Yeah, the trees, go ahead, sorry.
you just don't want to be out. You don't want to be out of your vehicle when you're within
Yeah.
the boundaries, because they are pretty unpredictable. They're very fast. And
Yes.
one of my photographer friends was here shooting pictures and got chased underneath one of the trams. So,
And Jim and I've had some experience. Remember those two big bulls going at it for like 15 minutes that one day? We had to keep jumping back in the truck and, sitting in the bed of the truck. And, it's like, yeah, you didn't want to wander too far from the truck that day.
Yeah. And if you're out there during the rut and they're on the road, you don't want to stop.
Yeah.
They're just banging the side of your truck or your vehicle. They don't really care. So.
I was out there. Pam, are you still on? We were out there with Pam and a friend of hers that came in about a couple months ago before all this virus stuff hit. And we stopped in this big bull and we're in the Refuge truck and he's just rubbing against the truck. I mean, the truck is just bouncing up and down. And I try to get him off because I'm afraid he's going to do too much damage to the truck. So I start the truck up and ease forward a little bit. He steps back and he's jumping up and down. He's got his, just coming off on his back legs with his front legs up. And I'm thinking, oh gosh, he's gonna rush us, So I just stop the car. He settles down and goes back to rubbing the truck. He's got his head all over the hood and he's quite the character.
I've got some good video of that.
Yeah.
I got some good pictures of that.
Yeah. That was quite entertaining, wasn't it, Pam?
It was. That was funny.
Yeah, if you guys want to post some of this stuff you're talking about on the Fourth Tuesday group on Facebook later, that'd be great, and we can take a look at some of the stuff various folks have shot. Marianne had a question on the Facebook chat. What happens to the antlers in the field? I guess, what do they do with the antlers?
If they find them, they collect them, and then at the Mountain Man Rendezvous, if they have some, they tend to auction them off during the Mountain Man. They keep a certain amount there. Like I said, they've got Downturn, the one with the Downturn, they keep his set. I've been lucky enough to find one out there before. So if you get to
always has a Downturn antler every year.
He'll have the exact same antler. You'll notice once you see one that you recognize them, their antlers will pretty much look the same once they become adult, the same every year. So if they break one, I think it looks that way even the next year. So, I mean, well, I guess it depends, but if we break it late in this season, but yeah, that was the unique thing about it is every year he was so easy to identify. And that's probably why I liked him so much, because he was easy to go find every year.
His nickname was Drop Time.
Yeah, drop time.
Had those things that went straight down, which is unusual.
Yeah. Very cool. We've had, used to have an old grandpa that used to hang out there too. He didn't hang with the main herd. He stayed pretty close to the visitor center. He had a pretty impressive rack too. I'd love to see him in his younger days. But there's probably about 5 or 6 out there right now that have some pretty magnificent antlers. I mean, they all got really nice ones, but I'm talking really big and just, if you were a hunter, you would probably want one. As a photographer, I want one, I want their picture every year. So don't kill them, please.
And if
Any
you,
other-
I was gonna say, if you want to see the auction's open to the public.
Yeah.
Just don't raise your hand. You may buy one. But you can sit out there in the stands and they bring them in and they auction them off. It's pretty amazing to see that as well.
Okay, yeah, I think we answered this already. I see that Maxwell provide food for bad winters. And like that one year that was really bad, they did provide extra range cubes, but they do, even right now, they'll drop range cubes every day just to supplement what the grass is, since they can't leave the area to find better grass. They will supplement
Yeah.
with some range cubes. And that's like candy for those guys. They see that stuff and it's like kid in a candy store. Look out, don't get in anybody's way.
Mhm.
Is there any other questions? I'm trying to see if I see any other questions in the group chat.
I don't think, well, I will sign off of the live stream here. So thank you again, Jeff. And
All right, thank
I'm gonna
you for
stop the
having
live
me.
stream.